Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to play this clip for you as David Pakman on the David Pakman Show gets absolutely wrecked by whoever this guy is. I got no clue who this is, but he smacks David Pakman on his own show live. Let's roll the clips here.
Out by, tell me which groups it was again?
Well, it's actually, if you look at it objectively,
Yes.
you look at the setup that was very clearly there from a very early stage prior to January 6th, what you're going to find is that largely the parties responsible would be people like Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, Yogananda Pittman, Mark Milley in the Pentagon, Christopher Wray in the FBI, and people in Antifa and BLM.
How do you know that any of that is true? What evidence do you have, for example, that Nancy Pelosi was involved in what happened that day?
Well, because if you look into the testimony of former Capitol Police Chief Sund, he had his emergency powers revoked by Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell prior to the January 6th events, and they had to go. He had to go through them in order to deploy the National Guard. And when he gave the written request for National Guard to be present, they denied it because it would be bad optics and there was lack of evidence. But the evidence was all there. He was just not given the evidence by Yogananda Pittman, by the FBI, and by the Pentagon. And that's according to his own testimony. That's also according to the testimony of former Capitol Police Lieutenant Tarek Johnson.
Reviewed their testimony and was not able to find that. It's sort of beyond the scope of this interview to look at it line by line. I guess big picture, Jake, why do you think that parties that supported Joe Biden would try to interfere with Joe Biden being made president? Why would they do that? It seems counterproductive, doesn't it?
Well, the thing is what you have to understand is that it was about creating a setup so that a psyop may ensue and the weaponization of the Justice Department, the DOJ, could then be used to go after Trump and his supporters.
But that's just a word salad, Jake. It doesn't address the crux of the question, does it?
No, it does.
Excuse my cough there, but hit the sub. That helped me out a ton. Thanks.
Yes, it does.
How?
And just allow me to address it. So, because of the events of January 6th, there have been multitudes, thousands of Trump supporters that have been labeled domestic terrorists. And
Because they showed up and committed crimes, though, right? Or you're saying they were tricked into doing so?
But with respect, David, that's not the same thing as committing acts of domestic terrorism in the way that there has been acts of domestic terrorism committed, say, for over 200 days all over the country during the 2020 riots by Antifa and BLM, who claimed in their own on their own websites that they wanted to overthrow the American
Jake,
capitalist
that's a
system
non
and
sequitur.
install a
That's I
communist
have to
government.
interrupt,
So,
Jake. I have to interrupt, Jake, because what you have to understand is, imagine that I was accused of attempted murder. It is of no importance whatsoever if a year prior someone else somewhere else also tried to kill someone. I can't use that as my defense. And what you're saying is that part of the defense of what the people on January 6th did is your perception of what BLM did a year earlier. That's not a valid defense.
no, what I'm saying, dude, is this.
Okay.
What we're talking about here is optics, okay? And they tried to make me, in particular, look as bad as humanly possible. They used all sorts of trigger words and trigger images to put a label on me and many other Trump supporters to circumvent our constitutional rights and to basically centralize power and use the levers of power in government to go after their political opponents.
Okay,
And they
let me
have the
ask you a real
audacious
question about that.
fascists.
You're talking
that?
about being designated domestic terrorists. I want to be super specific here because I really want to understand your view on this. These cases like yours were federal cases. There is no official designation of domestic terrorism by the U.S. federal government. So who labeled you as such and where?
The Mockingbird media did all over the news, number one. And number two, are you telling me that when, say, the government is designating institutions like, say, the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers as domestic terrorist groups, or anybody for that matter that was flying into DC. I don't know if you're aware, but anybody that flew into DC in early January of 2021 is now being followed around by the U.S. Marshals on airplanes, and there are no U.S. Marshals on the FAA on the airplanes all across the country because of this label.
You're doing a lot of whataboutism and changing topics.
This isn't
Let's just try. Hold on, Jake. Hold on. Let's conduct this interview in a sensible way. Okay. Let's stick with one of the things you said. When we finish with it, we'll go to the next thing. Okay. You said that many of the people charged for their alleged involvement on January 6th have been designated as domestic terrorists by the weaponized DOJ. I then said to you, there is no such designation by the U.S. government in the legal proceedings that you're talking about. So what do you mean they were designated domestic terrorists by the weaponized DOJ? You said, well, the Mockingbird media did it. So are you ready on... Hold on.
You talked about me.
Let me finish the question.
You said, who labeled you that? Fine. And that's what I'm saying. Well, the Mockingbird media did.
You first said that the weaponized DOJ issued that label. When I told you no such label exists, you said it was actually the media. So from a legal standpoint, no one has designated
you're mixing
you
it
that.
up. That's not the case at all.
Okay.
What it is that I was saying what it is that I'm saying is that the DOJ has labeled numerous Trump supporters that were there on January 6th, and some people that weren't even there on January 6th, as domestic terrorists. And you
labeled
can
them
look
how
into,
and where?
And I'll tell you, you can look into the testimony of Stephen Friend, the FBI whistleblower who came forward and was talking about how it is that the FBI is designating these people as domestic terrorists and then handing these cases to FBI field offices all over the country instead of treating it like it was one incident on one day at one location. And in this way, they're...
As you can see, I mean, David Pakman just keeps getting his points just wrecked here. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that whole situation. I'll see you later.